FC, please.
Good morning, Ms. Nesbitt.
Good
Will
morning.
you please state your full name and spell it for the court reporter?
Joey D. Nesbitt, Joeydeenesbit.
And Ms. Nesbitt, where are you from?
Atlanta.
Where are you?
And I'm an admin for a law firm.
And just to be clear, do you have any legal training?
I do not.
And do you know Ross Harris?
I do.
Do you know Leanna Taylor?
I do.
How do you know them?
They were my neighbors and my friends.
And where were they your neighbors?
In Cobb County at Winds Ridge Condominium.
You still live there?
I do.
When did you first meet Ross Harris and Leanna Taylor?
When they moved in, I don't know exactly how long it was ago, but when they first moved in, I saw them moving in. And then didn't really start talking to them until after they had been there a little while.
Do you remember if Leanna was pregnant at the time that they moved in?
She was.
Were they good neighbors?
Yes.
Did you become friendly with Leanna?
Yes.
Did you ever become friends with Ross?
Yes, I mean, I went to their house and saw them together as a family.
Would you ever hang out with Ross individually?
No.
Would you ever hang out with Leanna individually?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, she and I went to dinner a couple times, and then we got into a routine where I came over once a week, and we watched Grey's Anatomy together every Thursday.
That was y'all's thing to do together?
Yes.
Okay. Just because these questions have been asked of many witnesses, I'll go ahead and ask you. Did you know anything about Ross and Leanna's sexual life?
No.
Did Leanna disclose any intimacy issues with you?
No.
Any allegations of Ross's extramarital activities? Do you know anything about that?
No.
Did you come to form a relationship with Cooper Harris?
I did, yes. Well, like I said, I hung out with them, sometimes quite a bit, and then I started to babysit him when they would go out on, special occasions.
Like date nights?
Date nights or birthdays or anniversaries, yes.
And did you have opportunities to observe Leanna and Ross interacting with Cooper?
Yes, I did when I was there, or I would see them, packing up. They would pack up and go hiking, take the dog and go hiking at Kennesaw Mountain, or walk around the neighborhood, stuff like that.
As far as Ross and Leanna's social life, were they constantly asking you to babysit so that they could get a break from Cooper?
No, I actually didn't babysit that often. It really was really more of a special occasion kind of a thing. I probably babysat 4 or 5 times for them over the period that I knew them.
Would you have opportunities to see Ross interacting with Cooper by himself?
I did see him out in the parking lot when they would be coming or going. One particular instance I remember was I came home and he had Cooper and he was getting ready to leave, and I said, "Hi, what's going on?" He said they were going to the Braves game, and I said, "And Leanna?" And he said, "No, they were just going." And that was not usual for him to just have Cooper, because usually Leanna would have Cooper. But anyway, he had Cooper, and he was excited that they were going to the Braves game. And I remember saying to him, "Well, he's been to the Braves game before." And he said, "Yeah, but he was too little to remember that then, and he's going to remember this one." And I thought to myself that I still didn't think he was going to be old enough to remember that, but I didn't want to say that to Ross, because he seemed excited to be taking him to the Braves game.
Did you know that Leanna would for work, travel to Alabama?
She did. She would go, I don't know how often, I guess once a month or so. She would have a part-time or contract job there. And she would generally keep Cooper with her to visit with the family over there. But this was the only instance that I knew of that, or the first instance I knew of that he had come back with Ross instead and was staying with Ross.
And this story that you're talking about, Ross wanting to build memories with Cooper at the Braves game, when was that?
It was not very long. I don't know exactly. It was not very long before Cooper passed away. It was that spring sometime.
And do you remember one of the last times that you babysat for Cooper?
I do, and it was also, again, not too long before Cooper passed away, and I don't recall. It was, again, an anniversary or a birthday, and I had come over, and they had gone out to dinner and a movie, and when they got home, Leanna and I was in the living room, you know, how was dinner and how was Cooper, and Ross went back to check on Cooper. And he came back out to the living room smiling and kind of motioned for us to come back. And went back to the nursery, and they had just recently started taking the baby bed crib bars down, and because he was getting older. And so they had put pillows out beside the bed in case he should fall off the bed. But when we went back there, Cooper had somehow, in the little bit of time between I checked on him last and they had gotten home, he had managed to turn around so that his body was resting on the pillows and his head and his arms were resting on the bed. And he just looked so cute that Ross just wanted us to see how he was in the bed.
When Ross and Leanna had come back from their date night, were you and Leanna just kind of chit-chatting in the living room?
We were. You had to go through the living room to get back to the bedroom, so we were just talking, and he had gone back to check on Cooper.
And Joey, is Ross and Leanna's neighbor and someone that got to share some nice memories with Cooper, did you love Cooper?
I did.
After June the 18th, in the following year, did the detectives ever call you? Did they ever come interview you?
No, not then.
Did they ever?
I spoke to someone from the DA's office in March of this year.
And was that the first time that you had ever been interviewed by somebody from the state?
Yes.
Thank you, Joe.
Hey, Ms. Nesbitt, do you remember me? I'm
Hi,
Jesse Evans.
I
I'm one
do.
of those people with the DA's office that came to meet with you at your law office. Remember that?
Right.
And then Mr. Boring was there, an investigator as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. There was a good group of us in there.
There was 4 of you. I don't really remember all.
Yes, ma'am. And that's not the first time I talked to anyone. On June the 18th, you actually talked to some detectives and police officers that responded to the defendant's home, remember?
Right, the ones that were there when I got there.
Right. So when the defense counsel just asked you about being interviewed by the police, you did speak to them. Are you aware that they made a police report regarding that from June the 18th?
Yes.
Okay. And then, of course, we followed up with you in advance of the trial sometime later and actually came and met with you at your office.
Right.
Okay. And I know, too, we actually provided an interview somewhere. You also were interviewed by one of the defense investigators. Do you remember speaking to him? A guy named JT?
JT, I did. Uh-huh.
Okay. And is that a phone call? Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Okay, so that was a phone interview, not a face-to-face interview.
Correct.
This was about 3 weeks after this happened, after you had initially been talked to by the police. The defense investigator contacted you by phone. Does that timeline sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were more than willing to speak with them, just like you were more than willing to speak with us about what you might know or not know. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And it sounds like y'all had you had a pretty good relationship with Leanna, in that she was even willing to leave you with a key to the house.
Correct.
Okay. And that's so that you could, feed the animals and, check on things when needed if they were ever out of town. I think that's what you shared with us.
Correct.
Okay. So it wasn't uncommon that you might be tasked with, hey, can you run by the house to do something or anything like that?
Well, really, it was just to check the cats. I mean, to feed the cats when they were out of town.
And then you just told us about the one time that you sat for them for this night out that they wanted to have. Is that the only time that you babysat for them?
Probably, I was a guess, 4 or 5 times.
Okay. And then I want to talk to you about the day that this actually happened. I'm talking about June 18th of 2014. You did receive a call and basically a request by the to go over and check the house.
Correct.
All right. And when you went over there, were the police already there when you got there?
They were.
Okay. And at some point, I know that you met up with Leanna later on after she left the police station. Do you remember that?
When she got home, yes.
So you were actually one of the people that was present with her after she left the police, and you were talking to her, correct?
Yes.
And I note here, as you told us and told the defense investigator, she was not crying when you talked to her.
She was not.
And then one of the descriptions that you gave was about outwardly what you observed as just being a neighbor and being around them and being around Cooper. And we've all seen Cooper. He's a cute little baby, wasn't he?
He was.
Okay. And outwardly, you at least, your perception was, hey, this seems like a nice, perfect little family. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
I think those are the words that you used. It seems
Yes.
like a perfect family. Do you agree, though, that you don't know fully what issues were going on with the defendant?
That is correct. I did not.
If he had a dark side, that certainly wasn't revealed to you.
I didn't witness anything like that.
And certainly you weren't there on June 18th of 2014 at the Chick-fil-A or anything like that. You were off at work and doing your own thing. Is that correct?
Correct.
And whatever he might have been doing on Whisper or otherwise with that child in the back of the car, you wouldn't be aware of those details because you weren't present.
No, no.
You can only testify about what you saw or what was revealed to you. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Ms. Smith, it's good to see you.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Step in.
Yeah, we're going to call Jason after. Our intern is going to look for a witness in the hallway, Judge. Jason Abdo. Yeah, we'll call Jason Abdo. Jason, if you would, please introduce yourself to everybody. Tell them who you are, and if you don't mind.
Yes, my name is Jason Abdo, Jason, Abdo, Abdo.
Just so these folks will know who it is you are, tell us generally where you live and what you do for a living.
Yep, so I live in Sandy Springs, Georgia, which is a little bit outside of Atlanta. I am a senior product manager in web development and technology.
Okay. Now, we've heard your name during the course of the trial a little bit, so just tell us how is it that you know Ross?
Yes, so when so I worked at Home Depot when Ross also worked at Home Depot. So we got to know each other, in the break room. We found a common ground of music, and we used to always talk music in the break room and whatnot. So I knew him from Home Depot, and then that's how I got to know Ross, from both working in the same building.
Okay. Can you tell these folks how long you worked with him at the Home Depot company?
Yes. So I was at Home Depot for about 2.5 years, and while we were on different teams, our teams did work together somewhat over that 2.5 years.
All right, and when did you leave?
I left April 2014. I believe it was April 19th, but in that month.
All right, April 2014. All right, so you left about 2 months before Cooper died,
Correct.
roughly?
Roughly, yes.
All right. You were not in the development side of things at Home Depot, though, right?
That's correct.
All right. What sort of was your area of work?
I was more in the business and marketing aspects and bringing web products to life, so the liaison between development, marketing, and design.
Is it fair to say you didn't sit in the same general area that Ross did here today?
That's correct.
Were you in the same building?
We were in the same building.
Okay, so you were in the treehouse.
Yes.
All right. Now, even though you left in April of 2014, you continued to have regular, in fact, daily communications with Ross.
That's correct.
All right. Can you tell us why?
Yes, so when we were at the Treehouse, Ross approached me with an idea to start a web development company, and he had developers that he had worked with in the past, his friends Alex and Winston, and they were looking for someone to help them more on the business side to market the business as well as garner potential clients to provide service for in web development.
Okay. And do you remember what time frame it was that Ross approached you about this business idea?
If I were to give a range, it'd be March, April 2014, around that time.
Shortly before you left?
Yes.
All right. What was sort of the general concept of what it was that y'all were going to do, and who was going to play what role?
Sure. So the general concept of what we were going to do was provide web development services. So if someone needs a website built for their business, we would be able to provide that service to them. So Ross was primarily the head of the development side, where they would actually code and develop the websites, along with Alex and Winston. Not to get into too much detail in terms of front-end development versus back-end, but to develop the website, and my job was to bring in prospective clients to see if we could offer them a service and meet their needs with web development, and build them a website.
All right. And did you have sort of a target market, a certain size company, or who exactly were you going to market this product to?
Yeah, I think, early on we were open to any type of business vertical, but mostly we wanted to target the healthcare industry and as well as the lawyer industry, either healthcare professions or lawyers, because they were at a cost point in which we saw in the market that would be beneficial to us and worthwhile taking on a job of that nature.
They might have the money to pay for your type of services.
Correct.
And we've heard from Alex and Winston, but who agreed they're also the sort of the development side.
That's correct.
All right. Basically, you were the business guy.
Correct.
All right. Was this a legitimate business enterprise that y'all were really putting together?
Yes.
Tell us why.
Well, we put a lot of time building out all the foundation needed to start a business, to create an LLC, all the master service agreements, all the different contracts needed to do work in Georgia, as well as provide a service to these companies that are either in the healthcare or lawyer division. Additionally, we wanted to do it to make some additional money on the weekends on the side, to, just make more money, I guess.
Well, let's talk about money.
Sure.
Did, during the course of your discussions, did y'all have some idea of what kind of monies you might be able to make a year with your new little business venture?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. We had an idea where we had a goal that we set for ourselves.
What was that?
It's about, if I remember correctly, $20,000 per person for the year.
Okay. And you thought that was doable?
It was doable if we, executed and we were able to provide the clients that we brought on, did great work. We were able to replicate that. Absolutely.
That's a lot of extra money.
Yeah.
Okay. Did this require that you, Alex and Winston, meet and get together to do this work, to do this, I guess, planning phase.
Yes.
Where and how would you meet?
It was more common than not to meet digitally via Google Hangout, similar to Skype or just web video conferencing, and to do it digitally.
Okay. Did you, from time to time, did you have to get together after work and meet in person?
Yes.
Did you ever try to get together during the day, at lunch or whatnot?
If it was during the day, it would be during lunch.
And just so these folks will understand, when you left Home Depot and went to Carter's, Carter's is in Atlanta,
Correct.
okay? Is it the Buckhead area?
It's in the Buckhead area.
So how far would your commute been to get all the way back up to Marietta where the treehouse was?
Without traffic, 22 to 25 minutes. With traffic, there's no way to tell. A lot longer than that.
Okay. And is that a primary reason why most of the meetings were virtual?
Yes, one of the primary reasons.
Okay. Now, these folks have seen and heard a little bit about the Google Chats. Is there another phrase or something for it that?
G-Chat, Google Chats, yes.
Okay. And we've seen it's almost sort of a stream of consciousness sort of throughout the day conversation.
That's correct.
All right. And it was between the four of you.
Correct.
And was this a regular thing every day that y'all would chat about various subjects, including your business venture?
That's correct.
What was the name of the business going to be?
Ninth Hour Development.
And the best that you could sort of categorize what Ross's title or role or sort of what he was, how would you characterize that?
Head of development, I would say. It's probably the best way to categorize it.
Were you at the stage where you were actually starting to seek out clients?
Yes.
Tell us, to the extent you remember, tell us about that.
Yes, so we had established LLC. We have, set up the tax codes and whatnot in order to be available to provide service in Georgia. And we had started seeking out clients. I had sent out a couple feelers, used my network, tried to find anyone who would take a startup that would allow them to do service. And we found one potential client. We never, ended up signing a contract with them, but we did meet with them. So we had started the process of meeting with different potential opportunities for the company.
Who was the client?
It was, I remember the doctor's name. I believe I don't know the exact business name. It was for Dr. Keating.
Okay, a medical doctor.
Correct.
And who had that contact to be able to pull in that kind of white-collar professional?
That was me.
And you and I met last night, and I asked you about this.
Correct.
Is that true?
Yes.
And you remember who that client was?
It's Griffin Psychology, I believe, or I remember Griffin was part of the name of the company.
That was one of Ross's clients.
Correct.
You'll maintain that client who will become part of the corporate.
Correct.
What happened to Ninth Hour Development after Ross Harris was arrested?
Well, Alex and Winston and I met, and we felt that we would not be able to continue the company, given that we lost, Ross, and he wasn't able to participate. We didn't feel like we could provide the service in which we had promised Keating or any other potential client.
And you and Ross were not close personal friends outside of your work at Home Depot and your Ninth Hour Development business venture. Is that an accurate statement?
I would say that we were friends because of the business and the professional aspect, as well as we both enjoyed music. So I'd say we were friends, personal friends. Maybe not the best way to characterize it.
Okay. All right. And but would you in fact talk about family from time to time?
Yes.
When's the last time you spoke to Ross Harris?
The day, I believe, it was a Wednesday, I think the 17th. Was
The day
it?
before Cooper died?
Yeah, or the day of. We were chatting on the G-Chat the day of.
All right, so I want to take you back then to the time before you left. That was a phone interview, or did you meet with someone in person?
That was a phone interview.
I asked you a series of names last night to see if you remembered who it was that you met with. Could you recall who it was that you met with, that you spoke with on the phone? Could you remember who it was?
I can't.
All right. If I said the name Sean Murphy, does that ring a bell?
That does sound familiar.
All right. Do you remember that in speaking with Detective Murphy, you shared with him a conversation that you had with Ross about Ross's feelings of having children?
Correct.
All right. And if you would just share with us what it was that you...
Judge, I'm going to object to this hearsay. I mean, he can testify right now about his conversation with the defendant if he wants to do that, but any conversation with detectives, this is an inappropriate manner to try to get that in.
Maybe I worded that poorly. I guess what I should have asked was this. The conversation that you had with Ross about children, did you share that with the detective?
Yes.
Okay. So what I want to know now is your recollection of that particular conversation. Did you pose a question to Ross about what it was like to have kids?
I did.
Right. Why would you ask that question of Ross?
At the time I was at Home Depot, I was 23 or 24. I didn't have a lot of friends that had kids already, so I wanted to know what it was like.
Okay. He was a little bit older.
Correct.
He was one of your few friends or colleagues that actually had a child.
Correct.
Okay. And how did he respond when you asked him about that?
So when I asked him about it, he, as I mentioned, we both enjoyed music, and he put it in a way I could understand from a music context, and he mentioned that as much as you love music, you'll love your kid 100 times more. And if you could never listen to another song again or be with your child, you would pick your child, hand over hand over hand.
That's how he put it to you?
Correct.
I think that's all of that. Thank you, Jason.
Good afternoon. Well, almost afternoon. You remember we met back, where was it? Phipps Plaza?
Correct.
Okay, for the jury, where is that?
It is right next to the Carter's building. It is in Buckhead, right off of Peachtree and close to Peachtree and Piedmont-esque.
So it's up in the city of Atlanta, correct?
Correct.
That was earlier this year we went and talked to you, right?
Correct.
Okay, and the police had actually talked to you because you're a coworker of the defendants in the weeks after Cooper's death. I guess June 30th is about 12 days after his death.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Now, I don't have any questions at all. One of the things, though, the defense asked you about was the business that you guys were running. Now, you had left Home Depot, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Alex and Winston and the defendant were still full-time employees at Home Depot.
Correct.
Okay. And I guess, was Home Depot okay with like people having side businesses and working on their side businesses during the day they were at Home Depot? I want to know what the policy is on that.
No, it can't be on the premises of Home Depot, but they're okay with you having a business outside of work.
I got you. Were they okay with y'all, or, well, not you, you were gone, but them chatting about it, discussing work and things like that on Home Depot time?
If it was done during lunchtime, then they were fine with it.
Do you agree sometimes the guys would talk about the work and things like that in non-lunch hours from those chats?
I can't recall exactly timing and conversation.
Okay. Now, and when was it that you left Home Depot?
I left April 2014.
Okay. Gotcha. So this conversation you had with the defendant was sometime before April 2014, correct? The conversation he said when he was talking about his son.
Correct.
Okay. And I believe you stated that, so it was a couple of months before Cooper's death.
Correct.
At least a couple of months.
At least a couple months.
Okay. Possibly. Correct? You kind of looked up to him because he's the only person you knew that had like a wife and kids and that type of thing.
Correct.
As far as you could tell, he also had a very loving relationship with his wife and things of that nature.
Correct.
And you weren't close personal friends, so you have no idea if he had a much darker, sinister side to you.
I'm not, no, I did not. You know.
And just, I know you don't know a lot of the details or anything, but if he did, he was pretty good at hiding that from people. Would you agree with that?
I'm not sure how to answer
Okay.
that.
If he had this other dark side where he's engaged in all kinds of, well, I don't want to go ahead and give you evidence, but if he were doing a lot of other things he wasn't supposed to be doing, would that be contrary to the all-American dad, husband that he portrayed himself to be?
Judge, I'm going to object to the characterizations.
Could you repeat the question?
Okay, now I don't think I can. It was so long anyway. I probably need to learn to ask shorter questions. Okay. The way he portrayed himself to you, if he had some dark side, he was pretty good at keeping it from you,
I'm
correct?
going to object to the characterization of dark side. I don't think that's a direct question at all.
Okay, I'll ask it directly. If he was paying for prostitutes, saying he was at a breaking point, messaging underage girls and getting pictures of their vaginal area, things like that, let's call that a dark side. Would that be completely different than the defendant that you knew?
I wasn't aware of any of that, and that would be different than where else I knew.
Okay. I'm sorry to have to ask you those things, but also, you guys, when you were there, would you go to lunch with him?
Yes.
Okay, and he would drive sometimes.
Correct.
He would drive the SUV.
Correct.
Okay. Now that SUV is pretty small, isn't it? As far as you remember.
I drove a car, so it was bigger than what I.
It's all relative.
Yeah,
Do you remember the car seat being in there?
I do.
Okay. Do you remember it being in the middle?
I don't recall where it was in the car.
Okay.
I just remember it being there.
Okay. Do you remember it being very close to the driver, coming up kind of between the seats?
I don't recall where it was.
Okay.
Apologies.
But he would drive sometimes, and when y'all would be in the car, he never had any problems driving or communicating, sensory things like that inside that car, did he?
Not that I recall.
Okay.
What business is Carter's that you work for now?
It's a children apparel company.
Okay. Do you ever recall Ross talking to you directly about asking for you to get some clothes from Carter's for Cooper?
I don't recall, but I know a lot of people ask me for that type of thing because I wasn't using the discount, and it's something we could provide for friends and family.
You don't recall?
I don't recall.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Are we not close enough for me to get a discount? Sorry.
spell it for the record?
Andre Brown, Aundrae.
And Brown, normal spelling.
Yes.
And Andre, if you'll just introduce yourself to the jurors and how you know Ross.
Good morning. I worked with Ross, I'm not sure how many years, maybe 3 or 4 years. We were on the same team for about maybe 3 of those years. And, so I'm his co-worker for that time.
At the time, were you the senior lead developer?
I think at the time I might have been senior or lead, but same thing.
Are you still at the treehouse?
No, we moved to a different building maybe 3-4 months ago.
And all your time that Ross was at Home Depot, were you at the treehouse?
We were in a different building for maybe a year and at the treehouse for maybe 2 years.
But were you together that whole time?
Yeah, the whole time.
And where did you sit in relation to Ross?
Can I use a jury as an example of where it's at? So if I sat here, this cue would be the same way.
And did you and Ross work on the same projects together? Were you on the same team?
Yeah, we were on the same team, and we would have worked on, I would say, 99% of the same projects.
So it's fair to say you would have had a good opportunity to observe and interact with Ross as a colleague and employee at Home Depot.
Yes.
You got to understand and form an opinion about his work ethic.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think when he first started, he was really motivated and he pushed himself. He started as an intern, and he really did really well. And we recommended that he come on full time. And he started. He did really well. And then after a while, it kind of started to lag.
Would it be fair to characterize Ross as having a lot of potential based on what you saw?
Yeah, I would say that when he first started, I remember I was asked to look over some of his work. I wasn't expecting much, and it was finished. So that, I thought he did really well as an intern.
Now, I want to talk to you about the sort of education and training that you have received in order to become a system engineer at Home Depot within the web development division.
Okay.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about that?
Went to college in Millersville, Georgia, Georgia College and State. I have a bachelor's in information systems. Graduated in 2004, and I've been doing that ever since.
Have you been with Home Depot the whole time, or did you have some other work experience in
Yeah,
that field?
I've been at Home Depot now for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was at Delta for maybe a year or two. Between that, some contracting jobs at Georgia Power. I did a few years with the Secretary of State, maybe a year or two there as well.
Do you have a skill set in developing websites that allows you to be referred some business on the side?
Yes, every now and then I get like contracting work on the side. Just based on my experience and people that I know, they'll give me work on the side as well.
And what kind of work exactly?
Just to build websites, you know. So, you know, if anybody here needed a website done, they could come to me and say, hey, I need a website. I'll build it free or for a cost, just varies.
Is that something that is permitted at Home Depot?
Yeah, once it's not on company time, that's fine. I mean, it's your free time to do what you like.
Do a lot of folks at the Treehouse at the time or in the web dev team, would they take on side projects?
Yeah, I would say the majority of people do. I mean, it's a way to make money on the side. It's something that you already know. It's easy. What we do at Home Depot is a lot harder than anyone from outside would have us do. So it's something that you can just do over a 2-day span. So it's easy.
I mean, Home Depot is a large company. The website is more complicated than most websites that you would be working on in the private sector, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember any of the clients or side projects that Ross had?
No, I don't. I only knew of one project that he was working on, but in terms of anything else, no.
And that wouldn't have been uncommon for folks in web dev to have a side project like Ross had.
Yes, it's not uncommon.
And in your role in web dev at Home Depot, do you know what browser customers typically use to access the Home Depot website?
It's Chrome.
Is that Google Chrome?
Yes, that's the main one.
And maybe not your division, but there is a division at Home Depot that tracks customer behavior and what browsers they use, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that would be information that you would be familiar with. You'd be aware of it.
Yes.
Right? How would you test and operate your day-to-day functions web dev-wise with Home Depot? What browser would you use?
Most of the time we're working in Chrome
And you say we, so...
as the dev team.
And dev team, just you, Ross, and maybe 2 other people, or how many folks would use Google Chrome as their primary browser?
I would say if you work on the website, then you use Chrome as your main browser.
And can you explain to the jury the process of clearing your cache and web history in just very basic, simple terms, and why somebody like yourself would do that?
So in general, so we're making a lot of changes every day, right? You know, like you might come and you're just like, for example, you don't like the color on a page. So it's blue, you want it to be red. We make that change. You won't see that change right away because of caching. And caching is really just the browser storing that information so that you can get it faster, right? So even though I've changed that color, you won't see it, or we won't see it right away. So we clear cache to make sure it's not stored in the system. And so we just do that over and over to make sure that our changes are getting picked up.
Is there anything suspicious about clearing your cache or web history?
No, it's kind of something you have to do over and over.
Now I want to talk to you about other web browsers, right? Google Chrome is not the only web browser that you use.
Correct.
Are you familiar with Mozilla Firefox,
Yes.
Internet Explorer,
Mhm.
Safari?
Yeah.
Are there others?
Yeah, but nobody uses those like Opera and other browsers.
I've
Yeah.
never even heard of that.
Right.
If most of your web dev work is through Google Chrome,
Mhm.
okay, would it be suspicious or uncommon to only clear your cache and browsing history on a regular basis in Chrome and not worry about Firefox or Internet Explorer or Safari?
Yeah, because in general you're constantly working in Chrome, so you're testing in Chrome. When you get towards the middle or towards the end of a project, then you start to look at the other browsers just to save time. And so you might clear the cache on those, 5 times towards the end of a project just to make sure it looks right in those browsers.
If you're in a time crunch and perhaps you're not being as thorough as you should, perhaps you could get away with not clearing it and testing it in Firefox.
That happens a lot, and it shouldn't. But people make the assumption that if it works in one browser, it should work in others. It doesn't actually go that way. The browsers have their own backend, so it might look right in Chrome and work right, but not work in Firefox. So there are times where we'll see things break in Firefox because it hasn't been tested.
Now, Home Depot has a mobile site, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if a web dev team member such as yourself were wanting to test how the Home Depot mobile site was appearing before and after changes, Home Depot gives you all iPhones, and you could certainly test a mobile site with your iPhone, correct?
Yes.
And is the process the same about clearing your cache and web history on a mobile device such as your phone?
Yeah, it's the same whether it's your phone, your laptop, or your desktop. You still need to clear your cache to see the changes.
So, having talked about Google Chrome and on your computer, would there be anything suspicious about a web developer such as yourself clearing your cache and web history in Safari on your iPhone?
No, that's normal as well.
Are you familiar with the term or the acronym VPN?
Yes.
What is that?
It's a way to get to a network that if you're outside of a network, it's a way to tunnel into another network.
Do they have privacy settings?
Yes. So that's the whole point, right? So you're trying to make sure that you can get to another network, in a private manner.
In a secure manner?
Yes, that's the right word.
Does Home Depot have a VPN?
Yes.
So if you were working from home or working from Starbucks,
Yeah.
would it be common for you to log on to Home Depot's VPN?
Yes, you would have to do that to see the changes or to access our network.
So would it be fair using a VPN for cybersecurity reasons or just individual business reasons? Would that be something common or uncommon for a web dev team member such as yourself to do, or someone that was building a website to use?
Yeah, for the regular customer, that would be uncommon, but for a business and larger scale companies, that's normal.
I want to change gears a little bit and talk to you a little bit about Ross's personality. Okay? Having known Ross in this environment at Home Depot, and Home Depot is kind of a laid-back, pretty fun place to work at times, correct?
It's fun. I wouldn't say it's laid back.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're a lead, so you have a lot more responsibilities perhaps than others.
Right.
Is there opportunity for y'all to cut up around the office, in and out of the break room, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a friendly environment. I think the backgrounds of most people are the same. I know the age group, the people I sit with, it's same age group. Most guys are married, have kids, so, it's an easy environment to just talk around.
And while we're on that topic of kids, just very briefly, you're not from Glenn County, right?
No.
You live in the metro Atlanta area,
Yes.
okay? And I think some congratulations are in order, correct?
Yeah, I had a baby girl last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're going to try and get you out of here very shortly, okay?
Thank you.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Ross's manner of speaking?
Yeah, I would say it's Southern, not in a bad way. He's really friendly. Southern manners is how I would describe him. So,
Chatty?
yeah, he's chatty.
Would he conversation bomb? Like, would he interject himself in other people's conversations?
Yes.
Fine. Do you have distinct memories of him doing this over and over and over again?
Yeah, because, we kind of sit so close, so it's not, your conversations aren't private, right? So it's easy for someone to just jump into a conversation.
Would it be common for Ross to share random stories that he had looked up or seen on the internet?
Yes.
Is that typical for the work environment in general?
Not sort of, yes, because, you come in the mornings, somebody might have seen something on the internet or heard something on the radio, and, you talk about it for a while, and then you go about your day.
Common for folks to have multiple devices up, correct?
Yeah, you might, like some folks have their computer up. Like I listen to sports on my phone, so I have my headphones on, and so some folks have an iPad up.
A lot of people are multitasking, correct?
Yeah, you kind of need some background noise to kind of drown out the other noise, so most folks work with headphones.
Would Ross share random YouTube videos?
He was on YouTube a lot. I don't know how much he shared with folks.
Okay, all right. Was he a fact checker type?
Yes.
If he was in a conversation and someone mentioned something or mentioned, let's say, a basketball star, would he almost immediately go look it up?
Yes. Yeah. So there, if we're talking about a game, if I said player X scored 40 last night, he wouldn't just accept that player X scored 40. He would need to check it on the internet.
As Ross became less motivated, would you observe him to be forgetful and absent-minded about tasks and objectives that you would want him to do or projects would require him to do?
Yes.
Would you have to stay on him for that?
Yeah, so there was a time when I used to just ask constantly, about certain tasks, like, is it done, where are we with it? And then after a while, I was like, maybe the best approach was like, because we have a team meeting every day, I thought maybe the best approach would be to just kind of leave him alone and make him have to speak on what he's working on our team calls.
And when are those team calls every day?
It varies from team to team, but I think at the time it was 9 a.m. every morning.
Leading up to June the 18th, would Ross kind of dodge some of those team calls?
Yeah, I'm going to object at this point to leading, kind of let it go a pretty long way.
I agree.
Do you ever remember Ross dodging team calls?
Yes.
And what was the time frame of that happening?
So he was assigned a task that he wasn't getting done, so, and we do everything in 2-week splits. So I would say maybe for two and a half weeks, maybe longer.
Was that in 2014?
That'd be 2 years ago, yes.
Do you remember that being in June of 2014?
Mm-hmm.
I'm showing you what's been pre-marked and shown to Mr. Bourne as Defendant Statement 179. Will you take a look at that email, please? Do you recognize your name as being the recipient of that email?
Yes,
And do you recognize Ross as being the sender of that email?
yes,
Is that a fair and accurate copy of the email that was sent from Ross to you on that day?
yeah.
I'm going to move E-179.
No objection.
And then,
Andre, if you would please explain to the jury what the subject title says and what it means.
It's IRG.
IRG? And what is IRG?
I don't fully remember the acronym, what it spells out, but it's basically a feature on the website. If you're searching for a hammer, we might show you other options of hammers. If you're buying a fridge, we might show you the hoses that you need for the fridge as well.
So, like related products?
Yes.
Whatever you're searching. And was Ross tasked with finishing a project within a sprint, I think is what you called it?
Yes,
And that was an IRG project, IRG sprint?
yes.
How late was he?
It was pretty late, if I remember, because it should have been something fairly simple, and we had spoken about it. So it was just taking a while, like it just kept going.
Was he dodging team calls related to that project?
Yes,
Were you frustrated with him about it?
yes.
Why were you frustrated specifically about how Ross was handling this project and being late?
So we were splitting up the tasks, right? So we get a bunch of tasks and we assigned the work. I thought that at the time this would be something that Ross could handle and should be done fairly quickly. We spoke about it, and then it just wasn't getting done. And he would be on his phone a lot or on websites, and the work just wasn't getting done.
Were you aware that he was starting up a new company around this time?
No,
So you wouldn't have known if he was spending a lot of extra time working on this company during work hours when he shouldn't have been.
no, I wouldn't have known, no.
Will you explain to the members of the jury when Ross sent that email?
This is a Wednesday morning, actually, so the day of the incident.
What time?
So this is showing a bit after midnight.
Would Ross typically email you after midnight?
No.
Go ahead and read to the members of the jury what Ross said.
I think I concede on this. I've been looking at this all evening, and I can't completely figure it out. I'm able to build out a list of accessories by grabbing the item IDs from the JSON object, even the technical stuff. Read everything?
Please, no.
No.
Did Ross ever seek help like this before on this project?
No, we had spoken about this either the Monday or the Tuesday, because it just needed to get done, so I actually did it myself the Sunday. So I knew what needed to be done. So I think either the Monday or the Tuesday, we went on the whiteboard and I gave him like the two options I came up with. And he said that he would have it done by the end of the day, so I figured he was working on it that day. But to send an email like that, no. In general, there were times when he might go to other people in the office for help. If he needed help, that's not uncommon to seek out help, but for some reason with this, he just wasn't asking for help with anything, you know.
On that Tuesday, June the 17th, after telling him that you wanted it done that day, did he get it done?
He left without completing it.
Did that bother you?
Yes.
Did you come into work on June the 18th?
No. I worked from home that day.
I want to talk to you about Chick-fil-A. Did you know that Ross had applied for a job at Chick-fil-A?
I remember he had spoken about their corporate culture. I didn't know that he had applied there.
Did you know that Ross loved Chick-fil-A?
Yeah.
How'd you know that?
So basically he had Chick-fil-A every morning for breakfast. And I would say maybe 2 or 3 times for lunch as well. Just a lot of Chick-fil-A.
Is that kind of a running joke, Ross coming in with Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, because, so the joke is that I don't like Chick-fil-A. Ross likes it. I don't see the big deal with Chick-fil-A, so we would have this back and forth about Chick-fil-A.
When Ross would bring Chick-fil-A, would he typically eat at his desk or in the break room, or
Yeah, he would eat at his desk.
you know what he would eat?
He would, no, I don't know. I don't remember. It's just Chick-fil-A. It's all the same.
Okay. Do you remember Ross regularly going to Publix in the same shopping center as Chick-fil-A?
Yes.
The parking lot at Home Depot. Andre, if you don't mind stepping down. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
I've shown you what's already been admitted into evidence as Appendix 35. This is an aerial view of the treehouse parking lot. Was there kind of a honey-hole parking spot that everybody kind of competed for?
Well, anywhere that had trees. So if you can just look here where the trees are, you can just see the shade versus just being out in the open.
Now, this spot here that you can see, right, this would be as you first come into the parking lot.
Yeah.
This is a pretty shaded spot, right? But it's not nearly as crowded as this area here.
Judge, I'm going to object to leading again.
It's directed, Judge. Would people commonly park this far away from the entrance to the treehouse?
Not in general because of the walk. I used to park right here because this is actually the most shaded spot, so it's kind of first come, first served. But this area here is just the walk, like most times people come around here look for a spot, but to go back around.
Do you recognize this spot here that you can pull forward into, and there's 2 islands with 3 trees around it?
Yes.
Was that the spot that people would not compete over, but if it was available, people were going to jump on it?
Yeah, so this spot here and these here would be the first spot with trees because it's just a quick walk. Yeah.
Would people walk laps for exercise around the parking lot?
Yes.
Now I want to talk to you about Cooper. Did you ever meet Cooper?
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 times.
Remember the first time you met Cooper?
Yeah, so it was maybe a little bit after he was born, and when you have a new child, people kind of take them to the office to show them,
Show them off.
Yeah.
Do you plan on doing that with your baby girl?
Him, yeah.
And you're a proud dad.
Hmm.
Did Ross ever bring Cooper back to the treehouse from Little Aprons?
I don't know if it was from Little Apron, but he has brought him there.
Like in a costume or?
Yeah, well, when he was in a costume, yes. I remember when Ross was in a costume.
Wait, Ross was in a costume?
Yeah.
What costume was Ross in?
The Home Depot mascot.
Homer?
Yes.
Was he carrying Cooper around?
That, I'm sorry, my kind of fuzzy, just so much time has passed, but I do know he's brought Coop back to the treehouse before.
Would Ross talk about Cooper
Yeah.
a lot or little?
So at the time, I didn't have kids, so it just seemed like it was a lot of talking about Cooper. Now that I have a child, it's just you're constantly talking about your child, and a small thing that child does, you kind of talk about it. So now it kind of makes sense.
Now you get it.
I get it now.
At the time, though, did it seem to you that he was bragging a lot or not so much?
No, he was always, I mean, any small thing. So again, the group of guys in that area, it's all young kids, right? So, I don't think anybody had children past 7, so everybody's always talking about their kids. So the few of us that don't have kids are just listening. We don't have anything to contribute.
Would he show you photos and videos of Cooper?
Photos, I remember photos, not videos. I don't remember any videos.
Do you remember what the photos were?
It could just even be a new shirt he had. He would have a picture.
Would that be the sort of thing that Ross would show you, just not necessarily big milestones, but if Cooper got a new shirt?
Yeah, it was just small stuff, right? Like somebody, he would come and kind of like, guess what my son did this weekend, kind of stuff like that.
Judge, if I can have a moment, that I might be close. Thank you, Andre.
Okay.
He's going to have some questions for you, I'm sure.
Okay.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Remember we talked over at Home Depot earlier this year. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm just going to, I know this has been about 2.5 years since Cooper passed away, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And soon after, I think June 26, 2014, do you remember speaking with the private investigator for Mr. Harris, J.T. Summers?
Yes.
Okay, so that was 8 days after the child's death.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you actually spoke with police, I think a little bit later than that, sometime in July. They actually spoke to you after that. You gave them a recorded statement.
Yes, yes, sir.
All right, so it's been quite some time since you talked to the police and the defense's investigator than today, correct?
Yes.
Would you agree that your memory about what actually happened and things like that would have been better back then than it is today?
Certain things, yes, but certain things kind of stick out.
Okay. Well, let's start with, you said the defendant was forgetful.
Mhm.
Okay. And you said that today, and that's, it's 2.5 years later.
Mhm.
Okay. You remember telling the defense investigator 8 days after the incident specifically that you would not describe him as a forgetful person?
I don't remember saying that.
Okay. If you said that 8 days after the incident, would that have been more accurate than what you're saying here today as far as your memory?
No, I've been in incidents with him where he is forgetful.
Okay, the examples you gave us about forgetful was you would, I believe, get him to do work things, stuff like that, and he wouldn't follow up on them and do them?
And I think I also mentioned the incident where we ran out of gas as well.
You told me about that.
Right.
Like about earlier this year, correct?
But yeah,
Okay. And that he was driving and he ran out of gas, and you thought, that's forgetful.
yeah, because we just left, yes.
All right. And you never told the police about that incident or anything like that, correct?
I don't remember what I told them.
Okay. Let me show you your statements, kind of marked up, the statements we all have, that you gave us. Okay. And in that,
Which one is this? Is this with the defense or the?
yes,
okay.
defense from 8 days after Cooper's death, you stated that you would not describe him as a forgetful person, but that he's missed some things you believe he should have caught regarding coding. That's what you said 8 days after Cooper's death, correct?
Yeah, but that is sort of saying that he is forgetful, though.
Specifically, you said you would not describe him as a forgetful person, but
Okay.
you missed some things regarding coding, correct?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. And in that time, in between the time you originally talked to the investigator for the defense, when we met earlier this year, you told me you'd already met with the defense attorneys again, and y'all discussed the issue of absent-mindedness and things like that, correct?
Okay.
Do you remember that conversation with them?
I remember I don't remember the order of,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Now, you talked a little bit about, also, you just testified that you remember the time that you saw the defendant dressed up, I believe, wearing some kind of costume?
Yes.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that you actually heard Mr. Harris tell that story? You didn't actually witness it?
The costume?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, but he used to dress up in costume as Homer, but the story of Cooper not knowing who he was in the costume, that did come from him.
Okay, so that wasn't something you actually saw, like, because the defense actually, when they asked you that question, was like, did that happen? That wasn't something that you witnessed. It was actually something Mr. Harris had told you about, correct?
I don't think that was a question, though.
Okay. Well, was it something that you witnessed?
So what I witnessed is Mr. Harris in the THD costume. I think you're referring to the story of the Cooper not knowing it was him in the costume.
Okay. You remember telling the investigators that you recalled Harris telling a story about wearing a costume and how confused Cooper was when he heard Harris's voice?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. All right. And then you said you thought this may have happened at the daycare, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably.
Just want to make sure we're getting the incidents correct.
Right,
Okay.
because he would only have that costume on the compound.
Right. Okay. Now, you talked about multitasking, and you guys at the treehouse, you would, y'all were pretty good at multitasking, right?
Yeah,
Like everybody was. You could be doing 3 different things at once.
yeah.
And the defendant would be doing that too, correct?
Mhm.
You talked about, y'all's policy. You could have a side job doing different things, obviously. I mean, nobody's going to keep you from being able to make money and things like that. But there was a policy you're not supposed to do that on company time, correct?
Correct.
All right. And so if the defendant was doing that instead on company time rather than while he's supposed to be working in y'all's job, that would not be appropriate, correct?
Correct.
And that may be one of the reasons why he wasn't getting his job done for you.
Correct.
And also, maybe it not being, you would agree that it wasn't necessarily like he was forgetting to do these jobs. The defendant may have just been lazy at some point toward the end.
Yeah, that part, but there were other things where we would specifically talk about what needed to be done 10, 15 minutes later, he would just forget to do it.
Or he just decided he was not going to do it. Would you agree with that?
No.
Okay. How do you know that he just decided he wasn't going to do it, or that he forgot?
Because there were a couple of times where his reaction when I pointed out, hey, you didn't do this, it's just like, that, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot. So sort of that type of reaction.
You would agree he could have been playing dumb so he didn't get in trouble.
No.
Okay. And you also said he was dodging the team calls. He wasn't getting this work done. Now, he wasn't, I think, and you told the investigator early on about this, he wasn't stressed at all at his job, correct?
No, I don't think so.
He didn't seem stressed at any time leading up to June 18th, correct?
I mean, that day when I came and spoke to him about, getting this done, I know that kind of stressed him out. And when I saw the email when I woke up, I was just like, yeah, this guy is really trying to get this done,
And he didn't get it done. He basically sent that email to say he could not get it done, correct?
Yeah, he got stuck, yeah.
And got stuck. Were you aware that during the same time he was supposed to be working on this, he was also messaging other women?
I did not know that.
Okay, and if he was doing that in those hours leading up to when he sent you that email and after it, that also could have been a reason why he didn't get his work done. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but if you read the email, actually he would have to have actually started and dug into that work to actually be able to even write that email.
Absolutely. So he was at least somehow involved in that. But you would agree that if he's also splitting his time messaging other women, talking sexual with other women and things like that, communicating with other women he had relationships with, 17th, the 18th, into the early morning hours, you'd agree that's possibly another reason he wasn't getting his work done.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe he was more interested in that than his job.
I don't know.
You said he wasn't good about responding. You're aware about how good he was responding to messages sent from other people in a non-work manner.
No, I only dealt with him in work. So, I know you talked about how he was, at first he was good, you said he was talented, seemed like a smart guy. And then he lost interest, correct? So, I guess he showed he could be a good employee, but when he lost interest, he just didn't care anymore and did what he wanted to do. Yeah, the work fell off a lot, yes.
You're pretty good.
All right, thank you.
Congratulations. How long is your next witness?
It's not going to be a short one.
All right. Let's take a lunch break. Ladies and gentlemen, close your notepads. Let's see. Open mind, no conversation. Enjoy your lunch. We'll be in recess till 1. Everybody have a good lunch.